And here we are for an episode of Dualistic Unity Raw, which I know you know because you just listened to the introduction that comes before this. But since we haven't recorded the introduction yet at this point, I figured I would say it anyway. And that's going to lead to the introduction later. Isn't it funny how time works out? And it's all just now. And to you, dear listener, you don't give a shit. You're like, just carry on with the show. So I will do so, and I will move my microphone closer to me since I'm just getting started this morning and my desk is somewhat a mess, or rather reflective of how disorganized I am. But I'll tell you, there's a certain beauty to not feeling like you need to sit down, get organized, be perfect, and worry about how people are looking at you or listening to you or perceiving you. There really is. There's a certain freedom to that. And I truly appreciate that. Like there are times on this podcast where I'll just go on a rant, frankly, and out of context, I sound like a fucking lunatic. But in the context of the entire discussion, it all kind of makes sense. And feel free to go on a rant and sound like a fucking lunatic because you're growing in the process. So there's a method to my madness, or a madness to my method, however you'd like to describe it. But there's a beauty in just living this way, to be honest with you. And I've lived this way for a long time. This podcast, the birth of it and the continuation of it has been a chance for me to refine something that I've been practicing for a long time. And sometimes we describe it as a, fuck it attitude. And it's kind of that, but it's not really that. It's fuck it to all the petty shit that dwells on this idea of me. And yet, on the other hand, there's a deeper amount of caring for everything else. There's a deeper amount of attention on everything I do. So it's not really fuck it. It's fuck that shit that measures me. Fuck that shit where I feel I can be measured or compared, or that my value is something that can be, that can fluctuate. Fuck it to that shit. But fully attentive to what's happening now, to the impact I'm having now. And that's not just on quote unquote myself, because as I let go of all that other stupid bullshit, I start to see what I'm doing to other people more clearly. And it's because, frankly, I'm not so driven with tunnel vision towards something or away from something. And so there is more caring than we would expect in this fuck it mentality. It's just that we're saying fuck it to the illusions that have blinded us and made us suffer and driven us apart from everybody else, or at least perceptually apart. Fuck that shit. But as to life itself, it's not about fuck it. It's about fuck yeah. Like, let's get in there. Let's make something of this. And I've just realized more and more recently that I love my life. And I love my life simply because of that, because I care very deeply about it, but not the idea of it. I care deeply about my life now because that's what I have. Fuck all the shit in my mind about what's not here, what could be, what should be, what isn't. I love what I have right now. And it's not an idea. It's just what is right now. So I've been dwelling on that a bit lately. As you can see from my t-shirt, we were at the concert last weekend, the When We Were Young t-shirt. And even the title of that concert to me is just kind of funny, because these are bands from when I was young. and then the idea of young and then the whole process of our life. It's an incredible thing when you can realize that you've always been learning more and more how to be yourself, or the consequence of doubting yourself. So just have faith in yourself. Just let go. Sound like a fucking lunatic from time to time, but the less you're trying to get somewhere, the more that sounding like a lunatic will be sounding like a harmless lunatic, like the kind of lunatic who's willing to question our boundaries rather than lose their shit over something stupid. A good lunatic, not really a lunatic at all, I guess. I guess that's just a funny word to use to kind of talk about the reaction sometimes you'll get from being willing to just enjoy your life and question yourself. I think it was George Carlin, though it may have been earlier than that, but those who can't hear the music think people who are dancing look crazy. I know I got that quote incorrect, but that's the summary of it. Like, if you're hearing the music and you're dancing to your life and you're having a good time and you're enjoying the process of being you, and people are judging you for it, That is their problem. That's their problem and a result of them not saying fuck it to the stupid shit that weighs them down. You know, just get into your life. It's worth it. It's worth it. It keeps getting better and it keeps getting easier, and to the point where you can talk to people every day and never doubt what you're saying, even though you know some of what you're saying isn't necessarily the best way to say it. You're always learning, you're always adapting, you're always, taking in the considerations, but it's never about you being more. It's never about you being less. It's about you being here. And you're here. Just express yourself.
Yeah, well said. And just being willing to let go and just like see what comes out, like see what happens and just continue to, follow whatever that focus is without so much idea of what it's going to mean or what it could mean or where it's going or if it's making sense or if it's a reasonable thing to say. Like all of those things are kind of being as we continue to express ourselves, continue to do things, continue to prioritize our experience right now. Like that's what we're learning is all of those things that we wonder about. Like, oh, can I do this, get there, say this, whatever. Like we're always in that process of finding out what the most sensitive thing to do or to say or whatever is, but you don't get there from being so tense that you feel like you have to have a perfect step every single time. It's like as you continue, it's not even a way that you act or that you sound that eh, that makes you it's not even a way that you act that's like shows you that you've let go. It's the process of letting go is always in potential. Like the letting go is the thing that you're trying to get to, like that ability to just continue on without a concern about stumbling. It's so funny. Like for me, for a long time, it was the thought that, oh, you get to a spot where you don't stumble anymore, that you are just able to be spot on perfect. And that's not it at all because it's here now. It's your experience here now. And so the way that something is done isn't really relevant to that. And I can't know what all of those things happening surrounding right now even are. As much as I could make assumptions as I go about how things are going, but that's one of those things on the exterior, the edges, that fuck it stuff. And then as you were talking, I was getting like imagery, like literally like a tunnel is like within this is like fuck yeah. And all the other stuff outside of it is like fuck it. And that's pretty much it. Cause that fuck it attitude runs kind of all through society. And I very much have gone through like variations of like what that means to me, but they're initially it's kind of like fuck it, like fuck everything, including my experience right now. Like I don't even care about this right now. And it's almost like an avoidance tactic in a way. Like, oh, I don't give a fuck about anything. And that then is inclusive of here and now. And so there's almost maybe like a back and forth, like saying fuck it to everything and then saying fuck yeah, but like that kind of is expanded to other things outside of just where you're at. And then it's like fuck it and you know, nothing anymore. And then it comes back and then you're like, fuck yeah. And it's maybe not as much bullshit on the outside. And there's like a back and forth between fuck yeah, care about more than just here and now to fuck it, don't care about everything. And then it's just like don't care about anything. And then it's like a fluctuation almost back and forth. And it's, moment to moment. But I've can definitely look back on times where it was like this fluctuation between not caring, but also not caring because I cared, because I wanted to be because I want to be looked at like someone who doesn't care. And that was the focus. So that's not even for me at that point. It's still not for me if I'm trying to show people that I don't give a fuck.
I have to say it fucking warms my heart that we are having what a lot of people would consider to be like a fairly serious conversation, philosophical, spiritual, emotionally intelligent conversation. And we've broken it down to a fuck it versus fuck yeah mentality. I just fucking love that. It's great. That's exactly because it should be that. You know what I'm saying? Like it should be exactly that simple. And it should come down to what works for you, right? Like we're so busy trying to observe these sacred concepts and these words, and they're just words. They're just words. It's what we're implying. It's what we're trying to point at with those words. And if it comes down to fuck it versus fuck yeah works for you, awesome. Awesome. Because it's not the words, it's what you're getting from it.
That's really funny because I wasn't even considering how, like, basic we had gotten it to, because that's how I think of it. Like, fuck it versus fuck yeah, like, that's very much applicable to me. I think a lot of people. And that's so funny. How then thinking, like, zooming back out and thinking about all the different spiritual sort of things that I've gotten into, that I've followed, that anything, and how many words there are, how many just things you gotta focus on this, you gotta prioritize this, don't let this, impact your root chakra in this way, blah, blah, blah. It's just like either fuck it or fuck yeah. And that's all it's gotta be. And that kind of ties into something I was thinking about earlier today, just how much I'm realizing that it wasn't that all that spiritual bullshit at all, like, as much as, and we've talked a number of times about spirituality and how it's not it. Like, it's not freedom. It's another variation of basically a belief system to reinforce me, maybe less destructive over time, but still kind of something that is focused on, that has a set of rules to a degree, or at least something that someone identifies as this sort of spiritual thing, and reinforcing themselves and everything that comes with it. But, like, it's not spirituality at all. And I've really been enjoying, like, not thinking of it like that, and not thinking of myself like that, like realizing that it was kind of, because I was never like, I wasn't even into anything related to spirituality at all until I was like 23. And then kind of like got into meditation, got into all those different things as I was realizing, oh, okay, like through college, it's kind of like, yeah, I'm not Catholic, that's for sure. And then started looking into other things, and then it was like spirituality. But then I kind of had this fucking, I don't even know, like persona, that I was like a spiritual guy who gave advice, and like that, like thinking back to being 22, like there was none of that there. Yeah, sure, there was, like, my day-to-day interactions with people. If someone, maybe there was a couple times here and there that I gave decent advice or whatever, but, like, there was none of that spiritual thing. And then it just kind of, as I started to feel better about things, it was credit to, the spirituality, as opposed to just questioning myself, questioning my perceived limitations or fears, because that's all it was like pretty much all application as I went. And even starting social media was like application of the things that I had been letting go of, or the concern. But it's not like it's really not a spiritual thing at all. It's just, there's certain things that hold you back and throughout your life, and you have opportunities to let that go. You have opportunities to let go of the perceived certainty, that illusion of control. But outside of those types of things, it's not this whole like woo woo type thing at all. Like, it's here. It's just right here. It's it's so funny. It's just like, it's just where I'm at. And yet there can still be, of course, there's feelings there, but realizing that it's not as personal. Like, those feelings they just kind of they're there, but not as heavy, I guess. But yeah, it's like fucking,
Yeah.
yeah.
So here's the thing, and I get it because it's something that is it's a natural response to having this lingering perspective of yourself. Is that as you're starting to feel free, as you're starting to question all of these ideas of you that kept you so small and so little and so tiny in a world that was very, very separate from you. As you're starting to let all that go, you're starting to feel like you're being led. Like it starts to feel like things are getting easier. Things are just kind of moving along. You start to see quote unquote synchronicities. You start to see this evidence of an intelligence at play, but because of that lingering idea of yourself, you just can't reconcile that it's you. You can't because of the idea of yourself. And so what happens is God. What happens is spirituality, this belief in something larger, this belief in source consciousness, this belief in, this non-dual perfect intelligence, like, and all of it's just there because we're holding on to an idea of ourself that makes it impossible for us to accept that it's us. That's really all it is. And see, immediately you're like, well, me, not the you you're thinking about. The you are, but not the you're thinking about. Because immediately you're going to think about your body. You're going to think about how you identify as a being, as an individual, and that's not what you are. Right? What you are is what we all are. We've talked about this many times. Like the cells in your body could all rightly say that they're you. Right? This is it. You are everything. And that you are just a cell in the body, but you're not the cell in the body. You're playing the part of the cell in the body, but your awareness is the awareness of the whole body. In the same way that the awareness of every cell in my body is an extension of my awareness. And I am an extension of their collective awarenesses in motion. So when we say I, it's a totally different thing than what we really mean. But it really is that. As long as you're holding on to a small idea of yourself, you cannot see everything I just said. It gets limited by the layer at your skin. As soon as you're like, oh, it's the end of me. And that's what fucks you. It really is. You can look at that as the layer of the portion of your cell you're aware of, but extend your feelings. Extend even your imagination. Understand that you've never been anything other than a collection of influences going back and forth that you have been participating in. You're not separate from them. There's no division. Everything comes from you. Everything is you. It's just not the you're thinking about.
Mm. I'm feeling very relaxed now. That's for sure. And not really not really
Grace of God, man. It's the grace of God.
right. Man.
But do you see? But
Yeah.
that's it. That's exactly it. It's just all of a sudden we relax, we expand. We have a moment where we just stop holding on so tight and we're able to see something a little deeper. And then we run back to our fear and we go, that couldn't have come from me. And that's why we have spirituality. And then what you have is people who feel lost and afraid, and they're listening to people who are like, in that state, this is what I experienced. They're like, well, I got to try and get there. It's like, that's not how you do it, though. That's not what happens. Trying to get somewhere is just a part of that thing that keeps you blinded to what's in front of you.
And so it is just relaxing. Like when you're relaxed, that like everything's just right there. Cause there because there's nothing to be right there. Like there's nothing to think like, oh, the answers are right there. The thing to say is right there. It's like if it's coming from you, there's not a thing that you're getting to that's going to tell you what to say almost. It's like, oh, I'm going to sit here relaxed waiting for the thing to say or to do, as opposed to like someone's going to give it to me or it's going to come up from somewhere that isn't just me. And that kind of puts me back into not backwards, but like into back of my mind or whatever, as opposed to in the forefront. Because at the forefront, there isn't so much. It's like fucking weird, dude. Like it's like things are being taken in, but there's not like considerations happening at the same time that I feel like I'm aware of. And yet I know that they're there and it's like they're being taken in as I'm here, but they're not like it's like I'm not seeing them before things happen. I'm being them happening in a sense, and it's almost like there isn't that feeling of a buffer between, like, me, considerations, what happens, and is that not just always our hesitation of anything? Like, you go back to early on, season 1, like, my pauses were far longer all the time for the most part, like, every time it's almost like that's me sitting back and considering and trying to have that slight hesitation about what to say despite they're not it's like I don't even hear anything necessarily. And now it's kind of tripping me out because I'm realizing how there's no thoughts coming out and there's still words happening. And it's like, holy fuck, there's no control in this. It's just whatever's coming out, whatever's happening. And like even the thought of directing it in a certain way is like, I don't even know like, I can, but it's like as things are being taken in and sensitivity is being taken in, so I have to stay here. I have to be here for it to continue based on the sensitivity as opposed to being distracted at all. And it's like, it's really, really, I don't know, like new feeling and just wild. But then it almost reminds me, like, I can remember like so much more of my childhood now. It's been so weird. But those feelings as being a kid, there were no, like 5 years old, you start talking, you're just saying whatever's there. There isn't the filter, there's not the hesitation. Like, you had just learned how to talk a few years ago, and now you're just it's like any potential internal dialogue is just external dialogue for a child, and that's why they'll just go on and on and on about anything and everything that's going on because it's curious and that, but they're at the forefront, like, they're here all the time until, they get reasons not to be, which yeah, especially young, that just like the potential influence. Yeah. Anyway.
Now you see, now this is interesting because and this is kind of where I started this episode of Raw. I have a 4-minute clip from one of our episodes. I'm pretty sure it was episode 14 called "Letting Go of the Questions," where I say straight up, we're not thinking. We're just opening our mouths and things are coming out. And I've been sitting on this clip for like a whole day because from the perspective of somebody who knows what we're talking about, you're like, okay, that makes sense. From somebody who has no idea what we're talking about, we're basically advocating for ignorance. And I was just like, do I post that? So for anybody in the audience, if you think I should post it, give a shout out in the comment. Let me know if you think like, maybe sit on that right until you give it some fucking some context. Let me know there too. But yeah, I've been sitting on that for that reason because I understand that this conversation, when you get into the deep end of it, sounds completely crazy to someone who believes in control, the kind of person who can't possibly imagine going into a social situation without thinking about every single thing they're going to say. Cannot understand somebody who's just like, fuck it, say whatever. It's like, well, what if you say the wrong thing? What if you give people the wrong information? What if you tell somebody something and they go out and do something stupid? And it's all of this, like, you have control. It's all this idea of control. Like, you can say the right thing. You can be the right kind of person. You can have the right influences rather than just be yourself. And as a parent who watched my kid who's homeschooled and other kids who are homeschooled versus her friends who are going into public school year by year by year, the thing that you notice more and more is that they're talking less and less. And it's because they're thinking more about what's okay to talk about because we're told in class, quiet down. You got to talk about what schoolwork only. What do you and so we're just indoctrinated with this idea that there are certain things we can talk about and certain things we can't. And then we get older. It's like, oh, avoid religion and politics and all this. Like there's all of this conditioned stagnation. And so even the idea, even just expressing that you don't have to do that, you don't necessarily have to be right to be able to be talking about something that you're working on or processing. You know, people immediately go like, "Oh, you're going to stand up on a soapbox and say the earth is flat." See what I mean? Like immediately that idea of control paints the worst picture. But what we're saying is that in order to be able to express yourself, you have to let go of being the kind of person who absolutely needs to be that standing on a pivotal truth. Like, no, I'm this. This is what I am. Right? That kind of person can't just be themselves. You know, that kind of person who lives in contradiction to an idea is living as an idea. They can't just be themselves. Right? So there's more nuance to this conversation. But again, your average person who just wants to be in control isn't going to look at that. Right? They're not going to look at that. So again, sitting there, do I post this video where I very loudly and not very kindly say, like, we are not thinking about this shit. Right? But this is where that whole my words are my father's comes from, is they're not mine. Not mine, the individual. And he was using the word father. Unfortunately, it's like we would, like, it's mine, but not this me, right? Like he's trying to illustrate like an older version of me and a bigger version of me, and it just got all fucked up with the word father because everybody's just like, oh, we're children then. It's like,
And that plays into irresponsibility too, right? If it like that father-child relationship, then it would make sense that it's like, "Oh, no, God's got it all figured out. We don't have to do anything. We're just following his plan based on what makes me comfortable or not." And so that father-child relationship, everyone literally, like all religious people think of themselves as children of God, right? So they can maintain being a child for the whole time until they meet daddy after they die, right? And so it's funny though how many things growing up we're told, can't say that, can't do that, can't do this, can't do that. Like there's so many goddamn rules in school. Like that's one of the first things I remember learning are just what are the rules? Like rules to school, which is a third of my day. Like that's a long time to spend in a place that has a lot of rules, a right and a wrong way, right? And so, oh man, like how much that gets in the way of being able to just express yourself and then things are reinforced and reinforced and reinforced. And so no wonder so many things are coming up, so many issues because it's like we're actively suppressing human progress, actually hindering our exploration of what we're capable of. And, we'll have certain things come up, like the guy just broke the marathon world record, I think in the Chicago Marathon. It's like things like that with sports, but it's not like leaps and bounds in consciousness, in other facets that aren't prioritized in the same way, like being where you're at. Like even just that, I think the ability, like that's interesting because if all of this is just here now, and one of the toughest things, arguably toughest things for people to do who are always busy, busy, busy is just be where they're at. And like obviously you can do both. You can be where you're at and do a bunch of stuff for sure. But the real like the fact that in society most people can't just like sit down without like moving something or fidgeting or focusing on something or wonder about something. Like if that's not indicative of maybe humanity going in a direction that isn't optimal, I'm not going to say a good or a bad direction, but just realizing that like, wait a second, that's that's probably not a great indicator of how we're doing, but we'll just disregard any and all of those things or just the mental chatter people experience and the intensity of it and the fight of it. Because even with that, it's funny how much it's like, oh, gotta quiet my mind, like we were talking about that. And it's really not that. And so we think of even just having a bunch of mental chatter, like I just said, as this indicator, but it's not really that at all. It's just our investment in how many ways, shapes, and forms we're invested in myself just being this separate thing from everything else. It doesn't really, I almost can't even point to, because things will change, things will shift, and I've still maintained the idea, like, that independent variable stayed the same despite the idea changing and shifting so many freaking times, and the fact that this is the same, you know, me that was, 5 years old, and yet it wasn't. It's like I can maintain a memory and think that was me there, but that's not even it either, and so there's just so many ways that, I don't know, we're indicating where we're going or what trajectory we're at right now, and just the prioritization.
I want to give a shout out to everybody who's in the audience right now, and even the listener after the fact, because I mean, this is the whole point, is that we've been saying this for a long time. It's just about letting go. That there's more to this than just being in control, self improvement, gaining more testosterone, all that shit. I just I can't. It's always you need more control. You need more control. You need the perfect diet. You need the perfect structure. You need the perfect fucking regimen. You need blah 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 blah. And this podcast is just like, you don't need anything. In fact, while you're doing whatever it is you're doing, do you want to just listen to us babble away, spend some time with them, because that's all we're doing. We don't need to be anything either. So we're just sitting here talking to one another about trying to just accept that, or the process of accepting that, which is ultimately what we're going through. If you're willing to accept, if you're willing to even question control, question that direction you've always been going in, because it's leading to your suffering. Just ask yourself, like, is it worth it? Is there an alternative? Can I not get shit done without all this fucking pressure? And that's it. You can get shit done without needing to beat yourself up if you don't do it fast enough, without needing to make yourself feel like you're less if you're not doing it enough. You can still get shit done. You'd be amazed how much you'd get done if you'd stop beating yourself up so much. And so that's what this is just stop beating yourself up. I can say stupid shit for an entire podcast episode, and you, the listener, are going to listen to that and go, that was kind of funny. I didn't agree with that. Oh, that was pretty good, though. And all of it is coming from you. It's from you and your perspectives, because you might find something funny that other people might not find funny. You might find something insightful that other people might not find insightful. And so for me, I'm just going to be me. I'm just going to go through this. I'm just going to sit here and talk about things that I enjoy talking about, because I enjoy spending the time sharing. And the more I'm willing to share, the more I recognize I've never been sharing with anybody else, but I've always been just fearing my own expression, holding back what I am. And so I'm not really sharing with anybody so much as just being more myself. And that's what you're doing when you're willing to talk. You don't have to talk, but just being willing to talk, not being afraid to talk, not being afraid to just, I don't know, do a little dance in the middle of the fucking road, or whatever it is. Like, just because it's your life. These are your moments. This is your life. I can't say that enough. This moment right now is your life, and you don't know how much time you have in this form. Why waste it? Why worry about stupid shit that people might be thinking? Why worry about a future that you don't know is going to happen, when you can actually sink your attention into this and give it the attention that it deserves? Because, like, it's just like anything else. If you're not taking care of your garden, it overgrows. You can't enjoy it. Maintain the garden. Stop worrying about everybody else's gardens and what they think of your garden. Just maintain your garden. Why? Because you're going to sit into it. You're going to sit in it for the rest of your existence. It's the only reason. This is the nice thing about being an adult, is as you become an adult, and we laughingly refer to it as adulting, you start to realize, like, oh, I should do those dishes because they start to smell. Things start to crawl in them. Oh, I should do that laundry because that's really starting to make an impact in my room. Like, I should clean the house because things that are dusty are kind of nasty. And it's not because you have to, or because your parents are judging you, or because there's some authority saying these are the things you need to do. But you actually see the reason. You're like, no, I live here though. Maybe I should do it for me. And that's your life in a nutshell. If you were to take your whole life and just treat it that way, maybe I should do it for me. Everything would take on an entirely different tone. And that's all we're doing. That's all we're talking about. I don't do this podcast for the listeners. I don't do this podcast for where it's going to go because I don't fucking know. I do this podcast because I've always been talking about this shit anyway. Anyway, and I enjoy doing it. And so I just want to say thank you to everybody who's here enjoying the conversation, participating in it, and having the balls to just get up and do it themselves. That's why I love the groups. And I say the balls, but I include the vaginas. Just having the guts, the courage, the fucking chutzpah to get up there and express yourself. It's appreciated, and you're making a ripple whether you realize it or not. Just a ripple of authenticity.
Yeah, well said. I appreciate everyone who is willing to just do this shit, to even be willing to consider the idea that control doesn't have the perceived benefit that I thought that it did. And oh my goodness, like the thought of living just entirely for me, it's so funny how many situations there's still like fragments of considerations, even when I feel like, oh yeah, I'm feeling good, like feeling relaxed, whatever, not really concerned about things. There's still fragments. And even just right now, as you were talking about, like the whoever's listening, whoever's watching, like a part of me feels like I always have that consideration in the back of my mind, but it's like it's not a forefront like consideration, so it's not impacting me like literally as I'm speaking or talking, but because it's still sort of background, there's still something there as opposed to just talking to myself, for myself, living for me, like and the freedom, like just the relaxation, like the experience that comes with that is unparalleled. Like there's nothing like it because it's like I've had the considerations, yeah, like that idea that there's almost like forefront considerations and background considerations, and you can let go and be like, "Oh, I don't give a fuck what people think." And maybe some of those forefront considerations go away, but as long as you're maintaining, "I'm this, they're that. This is me. I am separate from them." There can still be the background stuff almost, or like the memory drive versus the hard drive, or the floppy disk versus the RAM, or whatever they are. Like the stuff that's deeper in there is still going to be there to some degree as long as you're perceiving like saying that I'm this right here, and this is it, and this was, yeah, maybe they'll judge, maybe they'll do this, and it's the assumption that they're judging me versus realizing that they're not. Like if someone judges you, they're not actually judging you. Like you said it before, if they're judging you, they're not even seeing you. And so with that, then it's just yeah, very, very interesting to see how the considerations change and how things start to shift when some of those, and it's like the deeper stuff gets brought to the forefront, almost looked at, relaxed through, like, oh, that's maybe an old deep consideration, and here I am 10, 15 years later, it still was in there because it got built on top of it. I know I'm using a lot of imagery here, but that's just how I'm seeing it, that all of these things built on top of it. And so as those things are on top or worked through, it's like, oh, that seems like a really, really old trigger. And it's because it's been there for a while, but it was based on like basically zero understanding, consideration, not understanding of what's happening, but just understanding of, the investment in an illusion, because it was being built like the perception of myself, the perception of a division was being more deeply ingrained or built upon. And so, yeah, it's funny how some of those deeper ones feel like they come up. And then as I relax through those, like the feelings are feel more intense than they used to. But then it's like once they're there, like, yeah, that was having influence, impact. And now I'm more and more just like living for where I'm at without so many considerations or concerns about what anything that could be happening within it is happening, because like I can't even know that.
It's interesting because it's not that that they're more intense. It's that we're not holding on to as many shields. Like, we're not holding on to as many concepts that divided us from those feelings. And so we're feeling what's always been there. And the reason that we held on to false certainty is because of how intense those feelings are. Right. And so we have the opportunity to just face it, recognizing that the reason it feels so intense is because we've willingly taken down our shields over time, just taken down those walls. And when I could take it, it's like, well, now you have a chance. And that's what this is, right? Is just going through that process, being that process, and recognizing that's okay. That's what this is. It's okay to feel like you're being knocked off balance. It's the only way to learn balance. So we are going to wrap up in about 4 minutes here. I wanted to mention that we had another one of our guests at the Netherlands retreat upgrade to a semi-private room, which means they're not going to be on the third floor anymore. So there is a third floor ticket that is now available. If you would like to purchase that ticket, it is less than $2,000. It covers all of your meals and substances and whatnot for the 9 days in the Netherlands. It's absolutely worth it. You will be on the third floor in a shared room with other guests. And both of those third floor rooms are going to get a visit from Andrew and myself at some point. We're just going to hang out in there, shoot the shit, have a good conversation, and then we'll join everybody else downstairs. But the point is that there is a bonus to being in those third floor rooms, and they're really inexpensive. It's a really good deal considering how much time you get, how much space you get, all of the meals, all of the attention. And again, the fact that there's going to be a guitar player, and we might be doing some yoga. That's more or less on the list as well. If not yoga, it will be some kind of therapeutic thing. We're working on the yoga instructor at the moment. Something's going to happen. Point is, those third floor rooms are fantastic if you're looking for a good deal. If you can upgrade to a semi-private room, I have to recommend that as well. And it's for this simple reason: every single bedroom in the semi-private floor, that would be the second floor, has its own shower or has its own bathroom. And in a place with 30 plus people, that's going to be really nice. So if you're looking for a little bit more privacy and you want to share with one person, get a semi-private room. There is also one private room that's available. If you'd like to jump on that private room has a double bed in it, so it's slightly more comfortable. It also has its own bathroom. If you are experiencing some mobility problems, definitely get a room on the second floor. There is a lift. There is an elevator in this place, so it will take you to the second floor room. So it's a lot easier for you to get up and down rather than take the stairs.
Yeah, options there, and those shared rooms under $2,000. You're not going to get much of a better deal for a retreat anywhere for the type of situation we have there with the 9 days and everything. So definitely, if you're considering, hop on there, especially if you're in Europe. And yes, an elevator. Yeah, there's an elevator, goes up to the second floor. It's sick. It's really cool. There are pictures on our website also if you're interested in checking it out. But yeah, very, very excited for that. Just a few more weeks and we will be in Europe with a bunch of DU motherfuckers and having a grand old time.
And again, and I want to make this clear because it wraps up the episode perfectly. We had no idea we would end up here in 2 short years. We had no idea within a year and a bit of starting the podcast, we would host our first 9-day retreat, and that it would launch another 9-day retreat within 5 months, which would launch another mini retreat with 2 months later, and another mini retreat 2 months after that, and other mini retreats ever since. We had no idea. We had no possible clue how or where this would go. And here we are, about to go and meet so many of the members of our audience, the members of our community, people like you. This is incredible. And it's all from just letting go. We don't have a business plan. We don't have a fucking idea of what can happen. We just have a bunch of ideas. We're like, I wonder where this will go. And as doors open, we either take them or we don't based on what's possible. But that's it. We're just following the current. We are the stream, and you are just as much a part of that. And there is a wave growing. It's incredible. So if you can join us in the Netherlands, please do. If you can't, do check out the tickets for Virginia Beach and California. Those are 2 mini retreats that are coming up in 2024. These are going to be fantastic events. Other opportunities to meet Dualistic Unity community members, though less of them, and for a shorter period of time. But it's still a blast. Everybody who's ever been to these mini retreats has had just an epic time. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. We'll talk to you in about 15 minutes on Patreon. If you can join us, it's a tier 2 call.
Looking forward to seeing you there.